I'd like to quickly read two poems, and both are from my next book, which sort of focuses on landscapes and the intersection of poets, their works, the history of the place, the history of of their poetry. And to begin with, I'd like to briefly mention a sort of anecdote. So a few months ago, I happened to be very briefly at Trinity College, Cambridge for some event. And whilst I was there, I did sort of notice certain aspects of the landscape. And a few weeks later, I happened to attend the BRICS Poetry Festival in China, during which I ended up at the house of a Chinese poet called Zhu Zimo. And Zhu Zimo studied at Cambridge and wrote a poem called Saying Goodbye to Cambridge, which is a very famous poem. Now, in the poem, he talks about Cambridge, the landscape, the trees, and everything. So he died back in 1934. And I don't know, very coincidentally, a few weeks later, I saw that this tree that he wrote about has been cut down because of honey rot. And the university has decided to cut this tree down into smaller logs and send a lot of it to China. So there is a kind of fascinating story about the poet feeling so sad about leaving Cambridge, and so many decades later, this tree kind of going to China, to his home. So I thought of some sort of homecoming in that. So I think this is what the poem is about, just to give you a backdrop. And the poem goes like this. It's titled Zhu Zimo's Portrait. At a glance, Zhu Zimo's portrait brings you back to me. Within warm corners of his haining house, yearning binds papers you ripped into a great book of tatters. There, Cambridge skies from mid-March this year reassemble under Clare Bridge. Willows douse in the cam, reminiscing his homesickness. Sad farewells to Cambridge, delight, evanescence on flight at 34. Summoning up the foreverness of his distance from sunset dreams, puns upstream. Thence they moulder, a slow inspissation of longing, heart rot, honey fungi. Even now, the crickets are still. Between us two scatter silences under many colored skies. Lifting gaze off Zimo to Tagore's gift, the bracelet still revering a broken marriage. Very quietly, I take my leave. Even now, the crickets are still. In Hangzhou, crossing continents, won't gold willow cuttings soon sing of homecoming? That is the first poem. The second one is a poem. I'm from Kerala, and I went to London 5 years ago for my MA, and now I teach, and I'm doing my PhD in the UK. And this is when I was visiting over the summer, when my mom was lighting the lamp in the evening. And then, so this is me sort of thinking about memories of my grandfather and grandmother. When I was young, I would sit down when my grandmom and when they're lighting the lamp, and I would see the waves from the incense stick and think about how there could be blessings from the gods when I was really young. So it's like in dialogue with a sort of childhood memory and a kind of longing for someone who's no more. And the poem is titled Flickering Wicks, and it goes like this. Smoke zigzags from the incense waves burnt at dusk. Once they were to me blessings from gods grandma sang to in praise. How swiftly, softly, repeatedly I'd cup them all in as she sat in prayer with her eyes closed before Amma in a switch eclipses the fiery Nilavilaka, while flicker wicks in the earthen lamp under tulsi leaves, dissolving slowly into the black sapphire sky. 17 years, I still trace the snaky tendrils from the incense, sometimes sense it smilingly or sulking, often with no thoughts, no emotions, they are kisses, so far away from where grandma prays unseen. Thank you so much, everyone.
Next, I would love to invite an Indian poet, writer, translator, and editor known for his contributions to contemporary Odia literature. I extend my wholehearted welcome to Mr. Manu Dash to the 6th edition of Mathrubhumi International Festival of Letters, The Currents of Change, and to this session. Welcome, sir.
The poem which I am going to read to you, it is called Onam Poems. In the 1960s, there was a little magazine movement all over the country in every language, including Oriya, where one group called Onam started a new kind of a poetry, defying the modern poetry, and highly influenced by T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound, etc. So they wanted to be deeply rooted with the people, and they brought back the lyricism and all the things that was of our society. They started a very big movement in which almost 100 writers, poets at that time joined in the movement, and it was a big movement. Now it is not working, but I am perhaps the last person who has been writing Onam poems for quite from 1975. It is almost 50 years. The poems are so deeply rooted with their culture, and the dictions are used from the village. It is very difficult to translate. Most of the translators, this has been 3 times translated by 3 professors in English, and they are erudite translators, but they have failed. They have expressed that they are failing to bring the essence of a poetry. And as someone has told that good poems are untranslatable. However, I will read the poems in Oriya. You will see and you will feel, and then followed by English translation. And the poems have no titles. You will see there will be always a black spot, and no poems carry any title. And even we publish the magazine where no names of any writers are available, because we feel that a poetry should be read, not the poets. ବାଘ ଶୋଇଥିଲା ନିଘୋଡ଼ ନିଦରେ ମିରିଗ କରିଲା ନାଟ ଅମୁହାଁ ଦେଉଳେ ମୁହଁ ତ ଦିଶୁନି ହେଲେ ଚାରିଆଡ଼େ ଖାଲି ଫାଟ ଭଲା ସମୟରେ ଭାଲୁ ଧରି ଅଛି ଗୁରୁକୁ ବଳିଲା ଚାଟ ସଙ୍ଗତରେ ରସି ପଙ୍ଗତରେ ବସି ହେଲି ଖାଲି ଲୋକ ହସା ନେତ ନେତ ବୋଲି ନେତାଏ ବାଉଳା ଶକୁନିକୁ ଡର ପଶା ସମୟ ଗାଉଛି ପଦୁଅଁ ତୋଳାତ ସାପ ଖୋଜୁଅଛି ବାଟ ବାଘ ଶୋଇଥିଲା ନିଘୋଡ଼ ନିଦରେ ମିରିଗ କରିଲା ନାଟ ଅମୁହାଁ ଦେଉଳେ ମୁହଁ ତ ଦିଶୁନି ହେଲେ ଚାରିଆଡ଼େ ଖାଲି ଫାଟ ଭଲା ସମୟରେ ଭାଲୁ ଧରିଅଛି ଗୁରୁକୁ ବଳିଲା ଚାଟ ଯାହା ତ ଧରିଲି ସିଏ ଆଡ଼େଇଲା ଜୀବନ ତ ଦୋଚାରୁଣି କହରେ କାଳିଆ ହାତୀ ଗଳିଗଲା ପିମ୍ପୁଡ଼ି ରହିଲା କେମିତିଆ କଲୁ ଗୁଣି ବୁଦ୍ଧ ବୁଦ୍ଧ କହି ବୁଦ୍ଧି ହଜିଗଲା ବୁଦ୍ଧ ବୁଦ୍ଧ କହି ବୁଦ୍ଧି ହଜିଗଲା ନଈକୁ ଗିଳିଲା ଘାଟ ବାଘ ଶୋଇଥିଲା ନିଘୋଡ଼ ନିଦରେ ମିରିଗ କରିଲା ନାଟ ଅମୁହାଁ ଦେଉଳେ ମୁହଁ ତ ଦିଶୁନି ଚାରିଆଡ଼େ ଖାଲି ଫାଟ ଭଲା ସମୟରେ ଭାଲୁ ଧରିଅଛି ଗୁରୁକୁ ବଳିଲା ଚାଟ ଚତୁରେ ଚତୁରେ ସର୍ବେ କୋଳାକୋଳି ଠିକଣା ବେଳକୁ ନାହିଁ ମିତକୁ ଠକୁଛି ମିତଣି ଏବେ ତ ନୀଳଚକ୍ର ଆଡ଼େ ଚାହିଁ ଧନ୍ୟ ସେ ପିରତି ଧନ୍ୟ କରାମତି ସୁନ୍ ସାନ୍ କଳାହାଟ ବାଘ ଶୋଇଥିଲା ନିଘୋଡ଼ ନିଦରେ ମିରିଗ କରିଲା ନାଟ ଅମୁହାଁ ଦେଉଳେ ମୁହଁ ତ ଦିଶୁନି ହେଲେ ଚାରିଆଡ଼େ ଖାଲି ଫାଟ ଭଲା ସମୟରେ ଭାଲୁ ଧରିଅଛି ଗୁରୁକୁ ବଳିଲା ଚାଟ ମାନକୁ ଉଦ୍ଧାର କରିବା ଆଶାରେ ଗୋଟାଉଛି ମାନପତ୍ର କାନ୍ଥ ଭରିଗଲା ସଜାଉ ସଜାଉ ସାଉଁଟେ ଜୀବନ ମନ୍ତ୍ର ଆଜି ଚାଲିଗଲେ କାଲିକି ଦିନ ବାହାଘର ପରେ ବେଦି ମୁହଁ ପୋଡ଼ା କାଠ ବାଘ ଶୋଇଥିଲା ନିଘୋଡ଼ ନିଦରେ ମିରିଗ କରିଲା ନାଟ ଅମୁହାଁ ଦେଉଳେ ମୁହଁ ତ ଦିଶୁନି ହେଲେ ଚାରିଆଡ଼େ ଖାଲି ଫାଟ ଭଲା ସମୟରେ ଭାଲୁ ଧରିଅଛି ଗୁରୁକୁ ପଳିଲା ଚାଟ ପଢ଼ୁଥା ବସି ପାଠ ବାଇମନ ନହେଲେ ବାଜିବ ଛାଟ ଦି ଟାଇଗର ୱାଜ୍ ଇନ୍ ଡିପ୍ ସ୍ଲମ୍ବର and all the deers were having a field day. An invisible god is lying trapped inside the void of a doorless temple with cracks all over its wall. What strange times are upon us as the disciple is overriding his master? Hobnobbing with friends in bad company, I reduced myself to a laughing stock. The so-called leaders are after the flags and banners only, and even a sinister Sakuni seems scared of playing the game of dice. Time eternal is singing a tune to make a fling serpent dance. The tiger was in deep slumber and the deer were having a field day. All the hands that I tried to hold betrayed me as if I like itself seemed like a slut. Tell me, O dark god with big round eyes, what spell did you cast that even an elephant has slipped through the hole whereas an ant remains stuck? I seem to have lost my mind seeing the ghat gobbling up the entire river. The tiger was in a deep slumber and the deers were having a field day. Everyone is complicit in conspiracy with everyone else. They ditch and flee in the urgent hour of need. Lover betrays the beloved even while swearing in the name of God. Oh God, please save me from this such love and its absurd ramifications. Gusts of wind no longer blows in Kalahat. The tiger was in a deep slumber and the deer were having a field day. In my futile bid to salvage whatever prestige I have, I am chasing after plagues of honor. Now my walls are full of these as I try to learn the basic rules of life. I know if I slip out of it all and die, people will forget me within just a couple of days, like the burnt faces of the charcoal in the sacred fire on the podium once marriage is over. The tiger was in a deep slumber and the deer were having a field day. An invisible god is lying trapped inside the void of doorless temple with cracks all over its wall. What strange times have come upon us as the disciple is overriding his master. Oh, the lost mind of mine. This happens to be the entire text of life for you to realize, else remain prepared to get beaten by itself. Thank you. Translated from Oriya by Durga Prasad Panda. Thank you very much.
My name is Akshay. I'm a poet, I'm a spoken word artist, and an educator. So I do both traditional poetry and spoken word, and I was confused what to perform today. But I think I'll do a bit of both. There'll be some poetry reading and then some slam poetry as well. I wanted to walk you through a larger project that I've been working on, which is a mix of prose poems that are situated in the present and lyrical poems that explore childhood and memory and all of those things. But before we get to that, I think I'd like to start off with a spoken word poem just to, I don't know, involve people. This poem is about a childhood love that I've had. And I think if I start with the one about memory, people will go back into their memories and lose touch. So this one is called To the Woman That I Might One Day Fall in Love With. To the woman that I might one day fall in love with, I am sorry. I don't think you know me. We might not have met yet, but by the time we do, I'll be so done with love that I probably wouldn't notice you if you walked over my eyelids and made me blink every time your heels clicked. I know. You'll be more of a sneakerhead, but you'll wear heels if it meant it would make my rhyme stick, and I love that about you. Your first impression of me will be your worst. You'll hate how I'm full of myself. I'm always keeping your glass half full of myself, and when you drink me, it will burn like whiskey never did, and when you start getting tipsy, you'll hate how I make fun of you for acting like a kid. You'll hate how I pick my nose and pretend like I was rubbing an itch, or how I accidentally rub my hand against yours and pretend like I was rubbing an itch. You'll hate to realize I'm more than what you expected, more than my hair and my beard, more than my smiles and my tears, or the spectacles that I wear, because I'm technically blind to other people's feelings, and yet I'm just like every other guy you've met. Every other guy who told you they loved you but forgot. Every other guy who's cheated on you or you've done with a history I'd rather not share. You'll hate how it's unfair that I put handcuffs on my pain, bind my nightmares in straitjackets, and lock my past away in a wooden box, buried 6 feet beneath the earth. But don't worry. They'll eventually go Harry Houdini and escape sensationally, because no matter how hard I try, I just can't help but open up to the ones I love. So, to the woman that I might one day fall in love with, you'll eventually realize I was in love once before. Way before our paths crossed, I was stuck on a trajectory that was taking me straight to her. Like a trailer truck, hauling everything I ever owned on a highway with no exits, the rain pouring, it was all my fault. Losing traction on the wet asphalt, slowly slipping away from her until she wasn't there anymore, and I lost my way like a kid in the dark with no bedsheet to hide beneath and no flashlight to find her once more, or myself. The first time I take you home to meet my mom, you might be my favorite guest, but she was home. So when I call you, know that you might be the prettiest flower to bloom in my garden, but I built this garden for her. When I tell you that your smile is the best this world has to offer, know that her smile was out of this world. It was magic. No, science fiction. It was like watching Inception. You had no idea what was going on. All you knew is that you had to see it again and again and again until you figured it out, and I never could. And when I tell you that I love you with every breath that I take, know that she filled my lungs out. I used to hold my breath hoping she would never leave, and the blood cells that carried her to every inch of my body engraved her name onto the back walls of my veins. And when I bleed, no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to fix me. Your kisses won't heal my wounds, your words won't ease my pain, your eyes won't see that she was my only cure. So to the woman that I might one day fall in love with, I am sorry, I love you. But when night falls, when darkness calls, I'll go back to being that kid who is still searching for what he once lost. This first one is called Prose Poem for the World Wide Web. See, we all, most of the people here grew up in the time of the internet, and we've been stuck in this timeline of having to find meaning in a world that does not have meaning. We've all been stuck on the internet trying to figure our way through all the slop, scrolling endlessly. And so this one is for the internet. It's called Prose Poem for the World Wide Web. You wake up in a room that might make poetry difficult. You wake up in a room that might make poetry difficult, where lately you've been cascading like Venetian blinds into your own head. So you stay in bed and do what you do best. You doom scroll through the internet, through the news about the news, and the drama about the backlash, to the apology about a thing that isn't real unless you say it is, or unless the police say it is. Like the body of a poet that was found in London. Somewhere, another school shooting. Somewhere in the middle of the ocean, oil has spilled like a painting defecated over by activists who are just rich enough to not care about all the 15-year-olds dying on the other side of the planet. Yet, somehow, a man manages to give a 15-minute speech in which colorism is the 5th worst thing. Back home, a politician has been in the news for drinking polluted river water to prove that it wasn't polluted. The right wing still makes horrible memes, but they know their audience. And even the queer voices that you never hear from unless they are speaking for the cause are drowned out by pride TM ads and arguments over whether the front flaps on men's underwear are outdated or not. No, you do not want to save the rainforest. No, you do not want to support a small business, or God forbid, buy another subscription. You lose track of where you began or why, but you can't stop. You hope the cat pictures come sooner than later. Your fingers move unmanned. The scrolling almost impulsive. There is a thread about net neutrality and saving the internet, but you're not sure that you want to. Thank you. So, like I said, these poems are kind of built in this alternating jump between present and past. So now let us move to the past. I'm trying to escape the internet, and let me take you back to my childhood home. I come from a town called Chadaimangalam. It's not too far away. It's maybe an hour drive from here. It's a very mythical little town. But I want to take you back to my childhood home. This poem is called A Memory of Something Else. Lately, I've been thinking of things that pass through a place and how they become figures of speech. My home, for instance, is a poem that has been lying in wait. Let us undo the years, uproot the foundation, perhaps pick the walls apart like playing cards, or turn the whole thing upside down, shake, 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 and see what falls out. Metonymies, most of them, parts of a whole, threadbare tea strainers, the nuggets of putty peeling off the ceiling, chipped, split wooden door frames, and 30 decks of old cassette tapes. In a glass cased shelf, somehow dug into the living room wall, are 4 photographs of me and 7 of assorted gods. Irony, I suspect, was mixed in with the cement and laid over the stone. If you look close enough, stored away in the wooden almiras, attics, and unsuspecting table drawers are allusions to another time. Look, rotary telephones, a geriatric cathode ray television, address books, choked full of people, dead or worse, forgotten. A triadal sewing machine, and 500 yarn bobbins the color of the cosmos. A veteran pair of subscription glasses, one of its lenses barely holding on, like a metaphor, like a memory, things that breathe. Houseplants, 2 dogs that never met, a frog that wandered in, a million little guppies, a grandfather, a grandmother, a mother, and another figure of speech. Thank you. Clearly daddy issues, but we'll get to that later. So I kind of look at these lyrical poems as a way of escaping into the past, which doesn't always help because you always have to come back to the present and deal with stuff. And we all have, there is an art to like our distractions, right? We all have ways to find meaning, and one of it is falling in love. So I feel like I can't do a set without a poem about dating and falling in love. And this is back in the present, so this is called Prose Poem for My Turkish Barber. I read this at another session as well. Prose Poem for My Turkish Barber. You wake up in a room that might make poetry difficult. So you decide to fall in love because it worked the last time. And everyone knows heartbreak makes for the best poetry, you tell yourself. And buy a jean jacket and spend £100 on a shoe. At the perfume shop, you try every scent and take home the one with the fancy name. You try 3 dating apps and hate the way you look in every photo you've ever taken. And yet, you spend time crafting a bio that is hopefully funny, but not too funny, and hopefully honest, but not too honest, and hopefully delineates your entire existence in 300 characters. You steal pickup lines from the friend who keeps a book of pickup lines, and you go on walks for all of your first dates because it's cheaper. But you make sure you buy them flowers because everyone deserves flowers. But the posies from Tesco last less than a week, and when all else fails, you blame your hair. Too curly at the roots, too frizzy to be loved, and then the Turkish man at the barber shop. He takes off your glasses. He runs his fingers through your hair that he says he is jealous of, and touches the rear of your earlobe, where nobody else has ever touched you, and the intimacy of it all catches you so off guard that you don't even remember returning to your empty room. Thank you. You don't have to clap. You don't have to feel forced to clap at the end of every poem, by the way. Are you guys wondering whether you should come in or not? Please do. It's poetry, you know. This next one is about a frog, actually. So we're going back into my childhood. See, in childhood, you don't have these like kind of complex ways of falling in love and dating apps, right? So it's mostly you fall in love with whatever you can find. And I fell in love with the frog. So this one is about that. It's called Hibernacle. His name is Lolan, by the way. Listen. Lolan showed up a few days before the turn of the year. I found him perched in a little alcove carved into my bathroom wall. On the second day, when he showed no intention of moving out, I named him because I could. His little eyelids were always half closed, 2 tiny black slits for eyes, as if they were continuously judging you. After a week of this silent scrutiny, I decided to ask about him. What does a frog do with a question? The Indian tree frog is apparently a pest that sneaks into homes in search of food. I was convinced that Lolan was looking for something else and definitely no pest. He never left that rectangular recess, and by day 37, I was convinced he would starve, but he survived my onslaught of inquiries, and then Valentine's Day rolled around. What does a frog do with a boy who has never loved? Slimy and tiger-striped, his brownish skin, erring on blues and greens, was the first thing I'd see when I woke up. Half asleep, I would open the bathroom door, wish Lolan a good morning, and then proceed to talk to him. 2 months in, we were best friends. Lolan knew about crushes and candle scents, about neighbors and Newton's laws and grandfathers and fathers. Maybe his bead skin reminded me of my Appupan's glasses. Maybe you realize nobody ever really listens silently to a child. You can be blunt with a frog. You can tell the frog that you love him and not be afraid. What does a frog do then with love and the loss of physics, with daddy issues and death? And then around day 97, if memory serves right, he was gone in a fist-sized absence in the corner of an alcove. A goodbye, you learn, is a privilege, and that loss too is law. I never saw him again, though even in childish optimism I did not expect to. In hindsight, there is a joy in having loved, that there was a chance to love, which my amma would tell you is the rarest thing in the world. So, what does a frog do? A frog does nothing, but sometimes, at times, nothing is enough. Thank you. You guys have been a wonderful audience so far. Hello, ma'am. We were just going through some past and present poems, and we're just coming back to the present right now. So this one is about this present. This is for you guys. This is called Prose Poem for the Audience. Also, there's only 2 more poems, so you guys are almost free. Prose Poem for the Audience. You wake up in a room that might make poetry difficult, but not impossible. Like a magic show, where there is a loud bang, sparks flying all in your head, where the crowd has been waiting impatiently, twiddling their thumbs and making polite conversation until the wand swishes. The setting falls quiet, and suspense, like a pensive trapeze artist, hangs in the air. They're ready for the show. You step out of the room and into the spotlight. Welcome to the show, you say, and they erupt into laughter. The climate is dying, you say, and they erupt into laughter, the claps of their hands reverberating inside the walls of the cranium. The violence is spreading, you say, the cheering growing louder every second. The algorithm knows who we are. Data, numbers, binary codes, you say, but it's drowned out beneath the snorts and hee-haws. And soon their eyes are red, salivating at the corners of their mouths that hang open in screams. Show us your tricks, they say. Tell us who you are when everything is grey. You sigh and spread your arms as if to conduct the orchestra of your thoughts. For my first trick, you proclaim, and conjure, seemingly from the fabric of the air, a bouquet of plastic flowers. And this last poem that I have for you is called Plastic Flowers. So it's my little bouquet of flowers that I'm going to leave here. It's also my little magic trick. And I wrote all of these poems while I was in the UK. So this is written mostly for a UK audience. So when I say this country, I don't mean India, I mean the UK. So don't get that confused. But stay with me, because this is someone who has left home looking in from the outside. So I feel like that's something all of you can relate with. Is everyone having a good time? Okay. Should I actually say one more poem before we get to the last poem? Is that okay with you guys? Sir? All good? Perfect. Because I was talking about home and the difference between home and away, I remembered a poem called Silence Conundrum, which is one of my favorite poems that I've written, because I have a very big ego. It's called the Silence Conundrum. Because let me tell you, I've always been really good at telling things apart. You know, you play with mud, not with food. Good grades are good, bad grades get you a beating, you get the gist. If you can cut open an apple with a knife, you can eat the apple, but not the knives. Knives are nothing like words. You can play with words, but not with an apple. Only assholes in movies play with apples. You see what I mean? Some lessons are easier than others. When I was little, I could tell that my mother was nothing like my father because she was there. Some lessons a little harder. You can tell that a boy is nothing like a man because a boy thinks that he will grow up to be a man, and a man knows that he never will. Telling things apart is easy. I can tell you, for instance, the difference between home and away, because I set out to travel once and never found my bed again. I broke a few bones and then they mended, and then I fell in love. I wept against their hair and held their eyes. I kissed their lips and loved them. You can't confuse any of it. In the years after love, which are nothing like the years before, I found the perfect song, and then I lost it. The next time I found the perfect song, it was nothing like the first. And then I found the perfect moment, and then I lost it. and I never found it again. But you don't need me to tell you that a moment is nothing like forever, because I can't do this forever, because poetry is nothing like life, no matter how bad you want it to be. Poetry forever is loud and obnoxious and shouting at you from the other room, while life, for a moment, sits beside you, not saying a word, which brings me to my favorite conundrum. I have sat in her silence and that of life, and I see no difference. Thank you. That was a quick love poem before we got to the last one. Like I said, this is called Plastic Flowers. It was written for a UK audience. It's about UK and India and how immigrant writing evolves you and how you look at these things. And it's a culmination of all the poems that we have talked about this far. So I hope you've had a good time. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, sir, for encouraging and being there. Plastic flowers. See, I've had this problem. I keep waking up in this country. I keep waking up in this country in a room that might make poetry difficult. So I do what any other sane poet would do, and I blame this country. You see, in Scotland, ennui wraps around you like a shroud, and its seemingly perpetual winter, drowned in a coldness that does not seem to end. Poetry is the last thing on your mind. I told myself that I was an imposter, not used to these waters, not used to finding warmth beneath beer garden heat lamps, not used to these icy paved street walks, not used to losing every leaf by December. But the truth is, I am no stranger to this country. The truth is, I've been to this country before. I've heard people sing about it. I'd read Joyce halfway through, and I'd been here in my dreams long before I had to beg for a visa to stay. Because you see, when I was young, I found a tongue that wasn't mine and I grew to love it. I drooled and spit and licked this language off of the ground where you left it. I even managed to find all the right words sometimes, and I have been searching for that feeling all of my life. So I left home. I left home in search of that land in my dreams, in search of poetry, and now poetry has left me. I grew up so much these past few years, but I can't help waking up next to myself. I moved across the world. I smoked like I was the fire. I drank the night away like you said in your songs, and yet every morning, there I am. So I realized that maybe this country wasn't the problem. Maybe the problem was that I wasn't poet enough. Here I was, screaming at the world for having to grow up. Here I was, screaming at the words to mean something. But I have learned that the words will forever hold their silence, that I must breathe meaning into them. So I dove into memory, recalled the myths that my grandmother told me. My childhood home, which is a poem that has been lying in wait. The old rotary telephone, the cathode ray television, the old cassette tapes, all parts of a whole. That old photograph of my grandfather hung there, adorned in plastic flowers by my grandmother, scoffing at death. His glasses, one of its lenses loose, barely holding on like a metaphor, like a memory. I know this course already. I have carried winters inside me long before I knew the feeling of snow. I was born beneath the equator, where the sun finds you, sets the trees ablaze, and turns the leaves translucent like a flashlight against the web of the thumb. I was born beneath the embrace of a sky so warm, so hearth-like that no coldness could ever reach my heart or my poetry. I have learned that I am not borrowing this language. I am doing it a fucking favor every time I speak it. I have learned that no matter how far I go or how much I grow, I will always wake up next to myself. And when I do, you better bet that I will wake up in a room that might make poetry. Thank you.
In a way, both of you were like spelling out the same experience from one tongue to the other, from one language to the other. So my question to both of you is, how does poetry sound different? How does poetry mean different in these two languages? One, your mother tongue, and then the other tongue that you acquired. So, I mean, I hope both of you got the context.
अरविंद जी ऐसा है, दिस इज द फैक्ट दैट I do write in English as well as in Odia. Perimal Murugan is a good friend of mine. Once I talked to him, I asked why you give your speech in Tamil and not in English. though you are speaking good English when we are gossiping across the table. So he told that I carry my language. Actually, that was an eye-opener for me, and I started taking Oriya poems. Earlier, I was not, I was reluctant to take Oriya poems to others. It is no doubt, translation cannot be 100% exact of the original language. And when you take some scent or perfume from one bottle to another bottle, some amount of fragrance will mingle in the air. It cannot be cut totally. Poetry is like that. And but besides that, there is no other way out to reach to other beyond your languages you cannot reach. But the essence of the poetry can be felt. Most of the best poems are untranslatable in India as or else anywhere. The phonetics, the idioms rooted deeply into that soil, culture, it is not intranslatable, not translatable. For example, this first word I have written is Bagha soithila nighodo nidare miriga karila nato. The lion was, the tiger was sleeping, was in a deep slumber. During that time, the deer was dancing in the room. It means it cannot be translated exactly in English because it will not come out in that way. It is a idiom rooted in Odia. So only Odia people can take the essence. Whereas I have, because once you are explaining a poetry, it is not poetry. Poetry is to be felt. Poetry is to be taken into heart that what is meant to say. That is there. So what you are telling, the tone, you told that the tone, different tone of the two, it will be different. It will be different. Even if in many places you will see the translation is also very good than the original writing. It has happened. If you tell that Marquez, he has given all credit to his translator, and he tells that it is because of my translator I have been known throughout the world, and he has written better than me. He has translated and made the total creativity better than my original writing. It happens, not always it happens. I hope you got it, my point.
See, literature, art, the medium could be slightly different, but it completely changes the way we approach it. I've been recently, so I do traditional pen and paper art. So I've been trying to get into digital art. And I went into it thinking, because I am good at pen and paper, it should automatically translate to digital art as well. But it does not, because it's a completely new medium, and the root, the building blocks of it are completely different. Though the sense of it is the same. Like, I know how to build an image. So that translates, but the way we use the medium is completely different. So when it comes to language, I don't write in Malayalam, but I can't enjoy reading Malayalam poetry as much as I enjoy English poetry, because I studied English poetry. I've read English poetry mostly, which means I know more about how it is crafted, more about how the rhythm works. And the rhythm, you mentioned the tone of the poem. It is usually the tone of the language. English language has an inherent conversational tone to it. I think traditional poets used to make use of it much more, like the iambic pentameter and things like that, which kind of imitate the tone of it. But modern poetry is mostly the tone of the way we use the language in real life. So depending on how we use it, the writing also changes rhythm for me, I think.
What you told that you do not know Malayalam, you don't enjoy, but to me, both I enjoy Odia poetry and English poetry or Hindi poetry to that sense, because poetry does not lies in the language. It is just like a shirt that we wear. Language is not the be-all and end-all of any good poetry. Poetry is the essence of something which goes beyond the languages. That's why it goes from one language to another language and thrive. Otherwise not. You would have not read Lorca or this Chilean poet Neruda. They are telling the sadness of the human being, and that is perpetual everywhere in the around the world under the sun. So my point is that it is not the language is not important. Important is the what you are telling, how you are telling, and how you are making an inroad to the heart of the readers.
I've heard most writers say that you cannot become a good writer unless you read. So who would you credit as your inspirations, whether it's poetry or prose?
It's a fact.
For both
You
of
have,
you.
there was a time when I have just completed 50 years of my writing career. I started writing in 1975. My guru was Mr. Kumar Mahanti, who started this movement. Had he been there and had he been aware that I am writing in English, he would have simply killed me. But the only thing is, I have deviated from my ideology. But you have to read a lot, right? Much lesser. But nowadays it is just the opposite. People are writing without reading. In Kerala, at least in here, I saw that people are buying books. In Odisha and other places, I have seen many places, people are not reading. If you do not read, why it is necessary to read? It has to hone your sensibility. It will sharpen your sensibility. You have the idea. Idea is not that everything, how sensibly you are telling. If somebody is telling that a moon looks like that, there are 1,000 poets that they will tell the way moon is, how it is moon. And you like most of them if they are there. That sensibility, for that, keeping that sharp sensibility, you have to read a lot. I hope I kept. Now you can.
Yeah, of course. Even when I started off writing, the advice that I got mostly from people who are already writing were, you can't be a writer if you don't read. Like, you need a bank of images and ideas that you can only get from reading the kind of writing that you do. So if you want to write poetry, read poetry. And as far as people who have inspired me, the writers that I like the most are the writers that piss me off. Like, sometimes I'll read somebody and I'll get angry at how good they are. I'll be, why didn't I think of this? For instance, I don't. Do you know Richard Saikin? He's an American poet. He writes very beautiful lyrics. There's a Canadian poet called Anne Carson. I studied in Belfast, so I love Irish poets a lot. There's a poet called Kieran Carson. So all of these people, the only thing that they write very different kinds of poetry, but the only thing they have in common is that I hate their writing. I want to write like that. I want to be better than that. And it's not in a toxic hate. It comes out of love for me, at least, I think.
In fact, my purpose of reading is to realize myself that how poor as a writer I am, because there are so many good writings. I always feel, I don't tell others, but I feel that I was boasting, but it is not, I don't deserve that. That is for keeping myself tamed, I used to read.
I write poem when I feel something, like when there's a fire coming out of me. But how do you write poem? I've seen poetry and my friends write poetry. During the competitions, they give a topic and then they just write it.
I got your point. If you ask me that how I write poetry, I cannot tell, but I know how to write poetry.
But I think. As far as writing is concerned, it's a very... I know there's a lot of writers and people who say poetry should flow out of you and it should be like this intense emotional response.
Wordsworthian theory of poetry.
Wordsworthian theory of poetry. But I find writing very tiresome and exhausting. I don't think it's an easy job at all. And sometimes I have to sit and stare at a blank page for a very long time, because I want to write. At the end of the day, the thing is that there's something inside of you that won't leave until you get it on a page or you realize it. There's that whole theory about doing things with your hands. If you're someone who does pottery or any kind of creative art, involving your senses and your body and your hands and your mind is a form of release, and it helps a lot process to process your emotions. So if you want to write, then you have to force yourself to write. Don't worry that it's not flowing out of you.
I'll just add one thing. Once Gautam Upasha, he went to his teacher, told that, sir, I want to be a writer. So he was fine. So he gave him a register. He told what to do. Now you write about this tree, 100 pages. Once it is completed, you come to me. I will tell you how to write. So he started writing, describing 1 page, 1.5 page, 2 page. After that, he went blank. Then he started writing, thinking, and I went on. And finally, he completed 100 pages. And he came to his master. And the master told, sir, now it is here. Tell me how to write. Now you have already become a writer. That is how the writing starts and ends, because you have to practice. Failure is also necessary while writing. Anybody who fails in writing does not fail in the life. At the age of 70, now I am nearing 70. Only 6 months back, a Penguin invited me to write a book. Otherwise, I had never gone to Penguin. I have never desired to go anywhere, because I was writing and publishing in my own language.
So
Now I think we are done with.
I have one more thing to add. Many years ago at IFFK, there was a movie called Tel Aviv on Fire. I think it was a Palestinian movie. It's about this writer of a TV soap opera who's struggling to write the next episode for a show. And he goes to cafes with his laptop. He listens in on couples, and he's trying to write, and he just can't write. So he goes to his producer and asks, he's this old veteran TV producer, and asks him, is there any advice that you can give me, because I can't seem to write the next episode. And what this producer says, he asks the writer a question: do you know the difference between someone who writes and someone who doesn't? And the writer is not able to answer, and the answer that he gives him back is, people who write, writers sit down and write. It is the act of sitting down and putting the thoughts to paper, and it is an intense, laborious process. But everyone has the same sensibilities. But you have to will yourself to a table, pick up a mobile phone or a laptop or a paper, and then just write it out first before you can process and edit and all of those things.
Akshay, I was listening to your last 2 poems.
Thank you.
I felt that in both the poems you are always going back to your deep love for poetry. Do you think in much of your writing you end up talking about how much you value poetry? Does it function like a hypertext? If so, is that very conscious or unconscious?
I think all forms of art are meta to an extent, where you end, because all artists, especially writers, are people who constantly think about their craft and ways to better themselves and innovate and how to express the same thing in a different way. So once you start thinking about how to express something, you start thinking about the craft, and then you start thinking about the act of writing and poetry, and that eventually finds its way back into the poem itself. So because art and literature is this intense kind of, well, it doesn't even have to be intense. It could be like a silly moment of ruminating on the act of writing or act of sketching. It does find its way. All art forms are meta. Even if you watch a movie, there'll be some common commentary about movie making, or the act of using a slow motion for a scene. It's a very conscious way of using that medium to talk about the ways the medium can express an idea. So
my questions to Akshay is not about the poetry, but about the memory, the spoken word poetry you just said. How do you memorize this? Do you write the poem first and then memorize it? But that memorizing must be phenomenal. And outside poetry, do you remember where you kept your car keys?
No, I'm very bad with remembering everything except poetry and maybe some ghazals or something. But it's once you write a poem, you kind of study it, you go to an open mic, you try it out, and you mess up. And then the second time you do it, you get better. And by the third, fourth time, it comes to you naturally. But that's how you do everything. Yeah, Sar was talking about writing. It's a repetitive. You have to do it everything. If you do anything for 5 days straight.
Perfection in any art, it is just a simple practicing, and keep on practicing. and have a trust in your art. If you leave it, then you are doing disservice to the art.
Well, thank you for the question.